Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Great topic for you today that one of our subscribers asked me about. What rights do you have crossing from the US into Canada? I'm going to break down that topic, and I'm going to talk about a US citizen, and I'm going to talk about a Canadian citizen in that situation. So first of all, let's say you're a Canadian citizen. Well, first and foremost, obviously, they have to let you back into the country, whether you've got a criminal record or not. If you're a Canadian citizen, you have an absolute right to enter. But when you arrive at primary inspection, so you're driving across the border, you're a Canadian citizen going back to, say, Ontario or another province. So the police obviously are going to ask you, or I should say the border security officers are going to ask you certain questions. What was the purpose of your travel? Do you have anything to declare? These type of questions. Those questions are allowed to ask, and you should answer those questions truthfully. Like, there's no question. If you start lying to them, you could be charged with certain offenses. Obviously, declaring, not declaring proper goods, for example. But they absolutely have to let you into our country if you're Canadian. Now, take a look at it this way. There's also secondary inspection. So if you're hesitant in your answers, or you're raising red flags or reasonable suspicions, or even randomly, they might send you to secondary inspection. And this could involve more detailed questions there. You have an obligation to answer certain questions. You don't have to answer all questions. You don't talk about they ask you about your background or upbringing, but they can ask certain questions about your declarations, what your purpose of your visit, how long you're away, this type of thing. Now, in secondary inspection, they may determine that they have a reasonable suspicion to search your vehicle. And that's a very low-level test of the border, so they can search your vehicle. They could perhaps even do a frisk search of you. Sometimes there's random searches as well. So if you're unlucky enough to get to secondary inspection, there's a bit of delay. But ultimately, they have to let you into the country. So that's a low-level search test of the border. It's not like when you're in Canada, in order to search your person or your vehicle or your home, there has to be reasonable probable grounds and sometimes search warrants for home. Totally different situation at the border. So be very polite, be very cooperative, and tell the truth. So that's my advice for a Canadian citizen. But fortunately, they have to let you back into the country no matter whether you have a criminal record or not. Now, a U.S. citizen, similar situation. You're crossing into Canada. They're going to ask you basic questions about the purpose of your visit, whether you're bringing in more than $10,000, this type of, how long do you intend to stay, that sort of thing. They can ask you whether you have a criminal record. Now, be aware that at the border crossings in Canada, whether airports or cars, bridges, and for example, Windsor or Sarnia, these locations, they have access to your criminal record. So be very truthful. You have to answer questions very carefully. Do not lie. Certain criminal records will make you inadmissible by Canada. It really depends. Just as an example, if you're a person from Michigan and you have an impaired driving conviction in Michigan, that makes you unfortunately admissible. They can turn you back at the border. It really depends on the criminal charge. But impaired is one, for example, that will refuse you entry. There's all sorts of other more serious criminal charges that can refuse you entry. There might be some minor crimes of non-moral turpitude, meaning minor criminal offenses, maybe a cause disturbance where you got in a fight once and in the States, you could conceivably get in the country. But bear in mind, sometimes border guards make mistakes. Sometimes they refuse entry for the wrong purpose, but they're the law at the border, and you're going to have to clear that up later. So you might run into a border guard who really doesn't know what they're doing. The odd one may make a mistake, and that does happen in rare circumstances. Again, you may be referred to secondary inspection. You may be raising red flags. Maybe they have a reasonable suspicion that you're bringing in contraband. They're going to search your vehicle, find it, and it's a very low level standard. You may be subject to a random search as well at, secondary inspection. So, before you arrive at the border, I know it's sometimes nerve-wracking, but you should kind of rehearse in your mind. They're basic questions. They're simple questions. Just answer them truthfully. You'll be less nervous. Do I have a criminal record? No. Have you ever been charged with a criminal offense? If you've been charged but never convicted, you should answer that truthfully as well. What's the purpose of your visit? How long are you staying? Are you bringing in more than 10,000? Just relax, take your time, answer the questions. Try and be as less nervous as possible, because that's a red flag when there's no eye contact and you're avoiding the questions, you're taking too long to answer questions, they're going to unfortunately refer you to secondary inspection. You might be sitting there an hour or two with them going through your vehicle ultimately, and hopefully you can go on your way. But some people, let's face it, there's some people who are very nervous day to day, and that's a nerve-wracking situation. But I think if you sit there and, oh, what are the questions they're going to ask me? Pre-plan my answer, just relax, take my time, answer them, and you shouldn't have a problem. But they can refuse you entry. Like America is not per se admissible to Canada. If you answer the questions properly, you're not bringing any contraband, and you've got no prior criminal record, you should be able to get in unless that particular border guard makes a mistake. If you think that they've made a mistake, for example, it's such a minor criminal record that it should have been admitted to Canada, you're going to really need to consult with a U.S. immigration lawyer to clear that up. And you'll probably be able to clear it up. But I'll tell you, there's certain criminal convictions, obviously crimes of dishonesty, drug crimes, you're never getting into Canada. Impaired driving currently is a crime that you can't get into Canada, for example. It's interesting because a Canadian who has an impaired driving conviction one time can get in the States. So it's kind of unfair. I know they've been talking for years about possibly retaliating and getting rid of that, because it's not fair that we're allowing a one-time conviction U.S. citizen into Canada, whereas not into Canada, whereas the States is. So I've heard Congress talking about chatter about changing that, but they haven't changed it. I've been hearing that chatter for 20 years, but there's still, I've heard recent chatter as well. So there you have it. It's just a situation where you want to tell the truth, you want to be prepared, make eye contact. Hopefully you don't get sent to secondary inspection and miss your flight. You're going to Detroit to the airport, you're sitting in secondary inspection. So if you plan it properly and you tell the truth, you're probably not going to have a problem. Thank you for watching our video. We are absolutely committed to bringing you the best possible criminal and DUI educational videos. If you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you've been charged with a criminal offense in Ontario and require our services, please click on the link in the description below.